Good morning, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call to order the License and Variance Board meeting for Wednesday, February 13th. The time now is 10:01 a.m. My name is Roy Acree. I'm the fire chief. To my immediate left is Frank Martin, the Director of Public Works, and to his left is Mary Moore, the Library Director. Also in front of Frank and Mary is Elsa Thompson here to record the official meeting minutes. First item on the agenda is a public hearing variance request V19-005 to allow a 6-foot wooden privacy fence in front yard on a corner lot, land lot 377.533 acres, 715 Bank Street for Mr. Mike Caprich. Is the applicant present? Could you step forward to the podium, please? Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
If you could please just state your name for the record and just tell us a little bit about this variance request.
My name's Mike Caprich. What this was in regards to was an existing fence was rotting. I decided to replace it. My property location puts me on Bank Street. It's somewhat of a sunken lot. There's quite a bit of foot traffic there, but no sidewalks. We simply wanted to have something that was a little bit more secure for our property, was our request.
Okay. And just for the record, because you said it's a front yard, and you also said it's a corner lot, right? So you have the corner of Bank and Stone Creek, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So in essence, by the city code, both of those street frontages, you have essentially two front yards by the essence of the code. Also, we're here today to contemplate the height in particular of the fence, because what is allowable by city codes and ordinances in the front yard would be a 4-foot fence. And it's my understanding that this height exceeds 4 feet. Is that correct?
It is 6 foot.
Okay. And you mentioned that it was to replace an older fence, so there was a fence in the front yard prior to this?
A picket fence.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. If you could just have a seat on the front row for us. So I'd like to go ahead and get some community development input. Joey Stobbs, if you would, please.
Joey Stobbs, Community Development, Planner 2. This is 715 Bank Street to allow a 6-foot wooden privacy fence in a front yard on a corner lot. As the applicant mentioned, this is at the intersection of Stone Creek and Bank Street. So both road frontages are considered a front yard. Applicant is wanting to put a 6-foot wooden privacy fence where a previous fence was located. This fence is slightly taller. And our ordinance regulates the placement of a 6-foot fence on our corner lot. Basically, the intention of that is so that a fence does not barricade a house in or create site visibility issues at an intersection. The placement of this fence is neither barricading the house or creating site visibility issues. So the board has previously approved many requests such as this. We've posted signage on the property. Adjacent properties have been notified. We've reviewed the request and recommended approval of the increase in fence height.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff or for the applicant? Go ahead.
Joey, just to clarify, if the applicant had put a 4-foot fence where he did, he would not need a variance.
That's
there
correct.
would have been no violation, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, staff or applicant? Okay, thank you, Joey. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody here that would either like to speak for or against item 3A, I ask that you step forward at this time, please. Good morning. If you could just...
Good morning, neighbor. I look forward to talking to you more.
If you could just state your name.
Sure, I'm Teresa Renee Fisher-Ari. I am a resident of Stone Creek on the adjacent. I'm 3 houses up.
On Stone Creek?
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually understand that this hearing is particularly about the height of the fence, but there's actually some significant concern about the fact that it was a picket fence before and now it's a solid fence, because the property actually is in a floodway, in one of FEMA's designated floodways. And so when you look at our floodway ordinances for the city, there's concern about having anything there that is an obstruction, or that could be an obstruction that could cause harm to anyone. Certainly, I understand the need for a privacy fence and appreciate that, but I'm concerned about the fact that this new fence is a much more significant obstruction within the floodway, and that none of the ordinances, certainly for this space that would be about the height of the fence, really address the fact that the imperviousness of the new fence actually will potentially cause a really significant amount of floodway concerns for the neighborhood, and particularly houses upstream and community upstream. And I'm wondering about, like, I don't know if an engineer has looked at it, but I know that all of the floodway and sorry, this is the first time I've ever come to a city
That's
hearing.
fine.
This is kind of exciting, but also very, I'm like, ooh, I didn't have all my talking points ready.
Well, then you
so-
must sit down.
I'm trying. Okay.
kidding.
So I'm trying to think about, like, have we had a city engineer look at actually how this may impact the floodwaters and the floodway? And I don't want anybody's land to flood. I don't want their land to flood. And I wonder if this type of impervious fence might actually cause harm for their home. So I know that this home was built with intention, with zoning to hydraulics and the way that the water flows, but with new owners over time, certainly changes are made to property that may not be also attending to the code. So I just want to put on record that there's concern from neighbors that there's possibility that the imperviousness of the fence, since it used to be a picket fence and is now a very well-built and completed 6-foot fence, the height is really not the issue for me. I'm concerned about whether it's going to cause floodwaters in the floodway, in the flood zone, and in neighborhoods that are currently not flood. We're not in a flood zone in my house, but we might be if we back up the stream.
Right, and I appreciate that, and I can guarantee you that the city, just as you stated, you're concerned about, the potential impact for flooding. The city's very concerned
Right.
about the same thing. Now, but just for the sake of clarity, when you talk about the imperviousness, are you talking about the concern would be that the fence would act as like a dam, like a damming
has
effect?
basically
Okay.
created a very well-built dam.
Okay.
Would certainly, but enough that it would probably create debris outside of the fence, on the north side of the fence, and block upstream, creating more of a possibility of flooding.
Well, we do have our city engineer here with us today.
Terrific.
And they have looked at this, and I intend to call him up in just a minute.
Great.
Was
That
there
sounds
anything
good.
else that you had?
Mostly just the concern about the FEMA notification of the floodway and what this would mean for, if that has already been checked out and it's certain not to cause a problem, I'll feel a great deal of relief.
Okay, thank you.
The height is not my issue, but I didn't know if I didn't say something about that now, if that wouldn't be a
Sure.
part of the future conversation. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward, state your name for the record, please.
Yeah, I am also, Katrina Sellers, and I'm 4 houses up, so I'm like a little bit, there's a house north of it,
Okay.
and also my proproperty backs.
If
to
you could
that
speak
side.
into the microphone, I'm sorry.
I've never
they
done this
record the
here
records.
before either.
Yeah.
Should I start singing something? No, yeah, so I'm just next door neighbor to Terry on the same side of Stone Creek, and I've seen this back flood substantially over the 3.5 years that I've lived there, off and on. And I also kind of, when I bought the house, made sure my house is safe and it's not in a floodplain, but back along the creek is a floodway,
Right.
which means the water needs to be able to move. And when it backs up, it will, back up into the properties north of Bank Street. And so I'm just like a resident living right there too. And again, I have no problem with the height of the fence. I just hope that we can find some kind of a solution to prevent water from backing up. Because a lot of water also comes from South Cobb, from the little buildings, their parking lots there, and so that area floods, and I've seen it flood substantially. So I think it's crucial just to keep the water moving away where it needs to go, and I would appreciate it if that can be looked at. If we all agree that the height is no problem, does that mean automatically the floodway issue is also solved?
Again, I anticipate to call to the podium our city engineer
Yeah.
who has some expertise in this, and we'll talk about that.
Because like I said, the height is no problem for me at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here that would like to offer public comment to item 3A? So in anticipation of this agenda item, this board has asked some similar questions that we've heard concerns about this morning from public input. And for that reason, in that research, we've learned that the city has in fact formally addressed the issue of whether or not this particular fence on this property would or would not create any additional impact, similar to the concerns that you've both stated. And for that reason, I've asked our city engineer, Kevin Moore, who can do a much better job at explaining that contemplation and what his opinion is. He can do a better job than I can. So Kevin, if you would please step forward.
As you stated, my name is Kevin Moore. I'm the city engineer. Just kind of a little bit of history. Back in November, I was contacted by a representative of community development to discuss the fence. Apparently at that time, some of the posts were going in and a concern was raised at that time. So to address that concern, I've reviewed our ordinance related to floods, and just to kind of quote what it says in our ordinance related to the floodway, which a portion of this fence is in the floodway, it says that encroachments are prohibited, including earth and fill, new construction, substantial improvements, or other development. However, development may be permitted provided it is demonstrated through hydrologic and hydraulic analysis that in accordance with standard engineering practice that the encroachment shall not result in an increase in flood levels. So with that being said, I've reached out just to kind of get some additional information to one of my contacts at the Department of Natural Resources, a state agency, the Environmental Protection Division. He and I had a discussion about whether or not, in general, a decorative privacy fence would rise to the level of requiring a hydrologic analysis. And it was his opinion and his experience that, and I'm quoting from the email that he sent to me, that, quote, "My gut tells me that a residential fence is unlikely to create a unquote, adverse impact." So with that being said, I actually went to the site. There are other fences in the neighborhood. There are privacy fences that appear to be in the floodway. So with that information, with my contact with the state, it didn't appear to me that it would create an adverse impact. I did, however, based on my conversation with the state, recommend that they move the fence 20 feet away from the top of the bank of the adjacent stream, which I believe that they did. So in my opinion, they've met our requirements. Now, that being said, had this fence been a wrought iron fence or a brick fence, I would have concerns about that, but it being a wooden privacy decorative fence, it did not seem to rise to the level of needing an analysis that's mentioned in our ordinance.
Okay, and just for my sake, because I don't have your engineering background, you're a professional civil engineer employed by the city of Smyrna.
Licensed in Georgia, yes, sir.
So when you talk about, you mentioned the person from the state, and both he and your opinion is that you used the phrase, I believe, a decorative privacy fence, a decorative fence. Do you think that opinion, professionally, do you think that opinion that it would not pose an impact would be based off of of its inability to really hold back a substantial amount of water. I know that water weighs, I'm the fire chief, it weighs 8.34 pounds per
Right,
gallon.
right.
And that's without any flow or movement. So
Correct, and this
my assumption is that if there were to be a 100-year flood or worse, that fence probably would not survive that flood.
I
or
agree
any
with-
fence along that flood.
I agree with that. Based on the material that they used, there are some minor gaps in the fence that would allow water to flow through. I don't view it as an impervious barrier to water, so I haven't done any calculations to verify that, but just based on experience, I don't think it would create a dam, so to speak, that would hold the water back.
Okay. Any questions for city engineer? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Okay. Public comments closed at this time unless there's anybody else that would like to say anything. Okay. Do you have any new information, ma'am? We would need you to be at the podium so that we can get your, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Just to make sure, so we can take an engineer's word that our houses are safe in floods.
I believe that his statement was that
The wooden fence does not act as a dam. It's okay to.
I think his opinion, and also the opinion of the person from the state, is that this wooden fence would not impose
Any threat.
a significant type of imposition or effect. Kevin, you could say it a little bit more eloquently. But again, we're here to contemplate the height of the fence, but we did want to address because there are legitimate concerns.
I know
And-
that's we are totally aware that it's about the height of the fence, but I don't know where to go else, and I feel like it's our responsibility as people
Yeah, I think
who
that
live
there
there.
are too many factors. I mean, if we get, I think we had a 500-year flood in 2009 or 11. I'm not sure. I don't know that anybody that's in a flood-prone area is going to be safe. But
No, I mean just in relation to the wooden fence, that it will not impact our properties. It's crucial for our safety. It's also crucial in terms of flood insurance.
I agree.
So it's
I
a big
I believe
thing.
that the statement was that the impact of the fence would not increase the likelihood of flooding. I believe
Yeah.
is that accurate enough, Mr. Moore?
So if I ever want to sell the house and stuff, I could have that in writing, and
Well, everything that is being said today is public record.
Good, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
ma'am.
I mean, like I said, we all keep our fingers crossed that we don't have a 500 flood ever, but
No,
with
yeah.
the torrential
Right.
rains these years.
And it's also that in this same floodway, if I'm getting that terminology correct, there are other very similar fences
Yeah.
in the floodway.
I looked at the FEMA map, and also when I bought the house,
Right.
they are really not in the floodway.
I can tell you that the addition of this or any fence is not going to change, any type of federal or state floodplain map.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying I looked where the floodway is designated by FEMA. That's what I was saying. So I think the fences that were built, they're not really in the floodway. I mean, but the last one on Bank Street is like really up to the creek. That's the only difference I have kind of noticed.
Okay.
But if I have your assurance that it's all good and won't cause any more flooding, then I'm glad to hear that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Moore, if you did, if we'll keep it quick, please.
I just want to clarify
Sure.
my comment that
Thank you.
what I have to go by is our ordinance, our flood ordinance.
Right.
And our flood ordinance says that development may be permitted, provided it is demonstrated through hydrologic and hydraulic analysis performed. So based on that ordinance, my opinion, along with the opinion from the state, that this analysis was not required for a fence of this nature. So I just wanted to clarify that that is my general statement about the.
Thank you.
I can't make a verification that, her house, I think the word that she used was her house is going to be safe. I can't attest to that. I can
Right.
attest that based on our ordinance, that our ordinance has been met.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Okay, one last one.
Okay, I will be quick. So I am looking at that
And
ordinance,
if you could
sir.
state your name one more time,
Teresa
please.
Renee Fisher, Ari, actually Dr. Teresa Renee Fisher, Ari. So the ordinance I'm looking at, that 4A about floodway, says encroachments are prohibited, including earth and fill. And I did want to say that there have been many trucks that have come into this space, both before and after the fence. And so I don't know if what has been brought in has been earth and fill. New construction, substantial improvements, or other development within the regulatory floodway, which is this is within the regulatory floodway. The other fences that are similar are within the flood zone, but not within the floodway. My home, we have a wire fence because we know that the water needs to move, and we want the water to move, and we don't want to create something that is not just holding back water, but also holding back debris, which we know the debris is actually what often causes the flood overflow. Development may be permitted, however, provided it is demonstrated through hydrologic and hydraulic analysis performed in accordance with standard, yeah, I know you read this, thank you, with standard engineering practice, that the encroachment shall not result in an increase in flood levels or floodway widths during a base flood discharge. So the question is, will this change the floodway width during the base discharge? Because it is possible that it will hold debris. And it says a registered professional engineer must provide supporting technical data and certification thereof. And it also says in the city ordinances that these ordinances are really conservative, right? Like this is the minimal amount of ordinance, the minimal requirement. So when there's a waiver to this, it should be taken quite seriously because of the fact that they're already pretty lenient as far as where our lines and waivers are. So I wonder, and I very much am glad that we have a civil engineer here who's part of the conversation. Thank you for doing that. And I hear like the EPA says their gut says that a decorative fence is fine. And the assumption is that this is, there are gaps in the fence and stuff, but I don't know that there has actually been what is required, a registered professional engineer providing supported technical data and certification thereof. So that's my wondering if we've actually met that requirement, more than a hunch or a gut or an assumption, or there are gaps, but actually, do we have data? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I think I understand the point of the concern regarding flooding, but where I'm not understanding is this property is essentially in a gully. So the street basically forms the high side. So I'm not sure how a wooden fence would dam the flow. I just wanted to mention that this fence actually goes down into a gully, so if it clarifies.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay. Yeah, hearing none, I'll call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve V19-005 variance request, allow 6-foot wooden privacy fence in front yard on a corner lot, land lot 377.53 acres, 715 Bank Street, Mike Caprick, applicant.
We have a motion to approve. It's been properly seconded. Without further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 3B, variance request V19-006 to allow rear setback reduction from 25 to 11 feet for the construction of a deck, land lot 618, 0.22 acres located at 1701 Claybrook Court, Barefoot Decks LLC, David Baker. Is the applicant present? Good morning. How are you?
Morning.
You could state your name, please, for the record.
David Balzer.
I'm sorry, what was your last name?
It's Balzer, B-A-L-Z-E-R.
Okay, so I had LLC David Baker. That's correct. That's incorrect.
That is incorrect.
It's Balzer. Okay, I apologize for that, sir. So if you could just tell us a little bit about this, the need for this rear setback variance for the deck.
This particular house is located also on a corner lot adjacent to 3 streets, giving it essentially 3 front yard, 25-foot setbacks. On an extremely sloped lot, the customer has gone through and put in drainage. He has gone through and put in rock drainage ways. Still has nothing usable as far as a backyard. Had a child last year, wanted more of a usable space in the backyard as far as the back deck to extend that surface area. We actually originally thought that it was Cobb County, so I went down and talked to the county zoning ordinance, see what they said as far as being able to build this deck within those lines on the survey provided. They said actually that they were perfectly okay with it. We then later learned out it was City of Smyrna, and so here we are.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. If you could have a seat. Again, we'll have comments from staff. Joey Stobbs.
Sorry that the L and the Z were combined on the application. This is a variance request at 1701 Claybrook Court to allow a rear setback reduction from 25 feet to 11 feet for construction of a deck. This is an existing single-family house with an existing deck. As the applicant said, the backyard is topographically challenged, so rather than trying to regrade the whole backyard, they are enlarging the deck to make the outdoor space a little more usable. It is bounded by 3 streets, Argo, Claybrook Drive, Claybrook Court, and the house faces sort of the corner. So it's catty corner on a lot with 3 road frontages, which really reduces the buildable area of this property. We've reviewed the request and recommended approval with one condition, that approval is requested on substantial compliance with the site plan submitted with the variance application. Signage has been posted and adjacent properties were notified.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Sir, you've heard staff read into the record one condition which we refer to as a standard condition, which basically says that if approved, you've got to build the deck in the same manner of which you've applied. You can't apply for one thing and build something completely different. Are you okay with that? With
Yes.
that one condition?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody here that'd like to speak on behalf of item 3B, I ask that you step forward now. Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to pass V19-006, variance request, allow rear setback reduction from 25 feet to 11 feet for construction of a deck, land lot 618.22 acres, 1701 Claybrook Court, Barefoot Decks, LLC, David Balzer.
I second.
We have a motion to approve that's been seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Have a good day, sir. Next item is 3C. It was a public hearing, variance request V19-009 to allow side setback reduction from 12 to 6 feet to construct an attached garage. Land lot 557, 0.44 acres, located at 1445 Collier Drive for A. Peter and Lee C. DeCenso. I hope I got that right. Is the applicant present, please? Could state your name for the record.
Good morning. I'm Peter DeCenso.
I did get it right.
You did
Yay.
get it right. That was great.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about your variance request, sir?
Yes, I'm on a corner lot. I just moved here in November. The house is acclimated at a slight angle on that corner lot. I wish to attach a garage, build a breezeway to a garage in the rear of the home. In order to attach the breezeway and keep it at a right angle, What that'll cause to happen is the garage will drift within that 12-foot setback. At its rearmost point, it will be about, if it's approved, it will be 6 feet from the fence, the neighbor's fence. But as it comes towards the home, the angle will improve or increase that setback or decrease it, if you will, to a point where it's probably going to be 12 feet at one end of it. So it's going to be slightly angled along the fence line. Part of that rear angle will penetrate that 12-foot section. So I'd like to get it to 6 feet in the rear, and the variance approved for that.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Hi, good afternoon, or
Hi.
good morning still.
Good morning.
Looking at the drawing, it seemed to me that the this garage will be using space that is already paved. It's already impervious surface. Is that correct?
No, it's actually a gravel driveway.
Oh,
at
it's a
this point.
gravel
It's all
driveway.
gravel in the rear of the home. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. If you could have a seat
Very
on the
much.
front row. And again, I'll call up Joey Stopps.
This is a request at 1445 Collier Drive to allow side setback reduction from 12 feet to 6 feet. The applicant has described this pretty well. This existing home is sort of at an angle to Collier, and they want to attach a garage to the existing home, so it puts it slightly at an angle. Additionally, there's an existing driveway that they are trying to orient the new garage with that driveway. So combining those two factors, it really necessitates having that farthest back corner have a side setback reduction. We've reviewed the request and recommended approval. Have posted signage on the property and notified the adjacent properties. We have 2 conditions to that approval, that it be built according to the site plan submitted with the variance application, and 2, that the garage is not permitted to have a full kitchen and may not be rented or occupied for gain. That's not specific to this property. That's just the general requirement in our ordinance that we are stating, just for the record.
And Joey, isn't it part of the contemplation of what you guys, with this type of a variance request, part of the contemplation of what you consider is the addition, and back to Mrs. Moore's point, the addition of impervious surface square footage as it relates to the size of the lot? Isn't that correct?
Yeah,
And
35% maximum.
So this addition of, theoretical impervious or real impervious surface still falls within those percentage allowances?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
This counts as their one detached structure, right?
This is attached by a breezeway.
Oh, so it's considered attached simply because it's a breezeway?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. DeCenso, if you could please come back. Again, you've just heard staff read into the record 2 conditions. First is the standard conditions. It's similar to the one, you have to build it the way that you've applied. But the second one is that the garage is not permitted to have a full kitchen and may not be rented or occupied for gain. So with those 2 conditions attached to this variance request, are you aware of those, and are you okay with those?
I'm aware, I'm okay, I'm willing. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
This is a public comment. If there's anybody here that'd like to speak on behalf of item 3C, I ask that you step forward now. Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve V19-009 variance request, allow side setback reduction from 12 feet to 6 feet to construct an attached garage, land lot 557.44 acres, 1445 Collier Drive, A. Peter and Lee C. DeCenso.
I second.
We have a motion to approve that's been seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is 3D, a public hearing, variance request V19-010 to allow increase in sign area for ground-based monument sign, land lot 753, 1.74 acres, located at 5220 South Cobb Drive, Clipper Petroleum Incorporated. Mark Linkish, is the applicant present? If you could please state your name, and I hope I got the last name correct.
You did well.
Thank
It's
you, sir.
Mark Linkish with Clipper Petroleum. And, you know, we are developing a Clipper / BP gas station along with the Bojangles there at 5220 South Cobb Drive, and we're asking for a variance to increase the monument sign from 32 feet to 57 feet. And we've worked with staff to come. We are actually going to reduce the overall signage of the total site by approximately 23.57 feet.
Okay. And so just for the clarification for record, when you're talking about feet, you're talking about total square footage
feet
allowed by signage.
Of the allowable signage, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any questions at this time for the applicant? If you could, please just have a seat. And once again, I'll ask Joey Stobbs for staff comments.
This is a variance request at 5220 South Cobb Drive to allow increase in sign area for the ground-based monument sign. It's pretty simple. They're asking for an increase in the freestanding monument-based sign from 32 square feet to 57 square feet, but at the same time, they're going to reduce the overall sign area, which ultimately will be 23 square feet less than what they are allowed to have.
So when you're talking about reducing signage square footage in another spot, are you talking about, so what's allowed and what's separated in the ordinance is the maximum amount allowable for a monument sign and then total square footage, so the other would be signage on a building?
Correct.
Right? So if I'm understanding it correctly, that if approved, the total square footage that's allowed, the combination of the monument and what's on the building will actually be reduced.
Correct.
And be within 23.57 square feet lower than what's allowed by the, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sorry. If you had anything else.
That's it. We recommended approval.
With no conditions, is that correct?
No conditions.
Okay.
I had a question for Joey.
Yes, go ahead.
So Joey, the monument sign, by it being a little bit larger than normal, is it going to create any visual issues for drivers?
It should not. It's the same, the maximum height is 8 feet, and it will be maximum 8 feet, just a little wider. So.
Any other questions for staff or for the applicant? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stobbs. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody here that would like to speak on behalf of item 3D, I ask that you step forward now. Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve V19-010 variance request, allow increase in sign area for ground-based monument sign, land lot 753, 1.74 acres, 5220 South Cobb Drive, Clipper Petroleum, Inc., Mark Linkish, applicant.
I second.
We have a second. I'm sorry. We have a motion to approve that's been seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. Last item on the agenda is 4A, approval of the January 23rd, 2019 License and Variance Board meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes 2019-28, approval of the January 23, 2019 License and Variance Board meeting minutes.
I second.
We have a motion to approve that's been seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Motion passes unanimously, and that is all for the agenda. I'll call this meeting adjourned at 10:40. Do that thing that Tammy did.